What's up, Totem Pole Nation? Welcome back to Lambo and Matt's World of Sports. Now we're getting into the women's side of bracketology. March Madness is starting very soon for them as well. We're going to get into our bracket picks, why we're making them. And to no one's shock this year, in my opinion, and I think in a lot of people's opinion, the women's bracket is way more entertaining. I think there's going to be a lot more like good games. And I think that it's deeper 1 through 5 seeds on pretty much all 4 quarters of it. I think the 1 through 5s could make a case that they're going to make a run. I think it's just deeper. And you'll see in my bracket that obviously it's going to end with a lot of high seeded teams because they're so stacked. The upsets are going to be like a 5 beating a 3 later in the bracket or something like that. You're not going to see huge 12s over 5s. You're not going to see massive things here because the top end of women's college basketball is just so talented. So before we get into everything, huge shout out to Sideline Sports Network. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. And if you want, some swag, some Totem Pole merch, TotemPoleNation.com is the place to go. It's all on sale. Run, don't walk. Get there. Support the boys. Let's get into this episode right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, looking at this bracket, I think it'll be the most accurate bracket just because there's a lot of good teams. And by the way, what I was watching and I was live streaming for the selection picks, some of these teams have home games. Virginia Tech and Blacksburg without playing Inter Sandman is kind of crazy. They have a home game. The men's team has a home game, even though they're in the NIT. But teams like South Carolina, they play in South Carolina. You got Texas that plays in Austin, Texas. So you got USC that plays in California. So you have multiple teams in that regional, depending on regional 1, 2, 3, and 4, that have home games in their first game. Go ahead.
So here's how it works with that. I'm pretty sure there's a spoiler. That's if Elizabeth Kitley stays healthy. We'll get into that later. I'm pretty sure in the round of 64, it's like the highest seed of per grouping of 8, I think. So like these 8 will play in one place. These 8 play in Stanford. These guys play in Columbus. These guys. Oh, no. I lied. Here's how it works. It's groups of 4. So, this group of 4 will play in Texas. This group of 4 will play in LA.
California. Yep.
Yeah. This group right here will play in Blacksburg because they're the highest seed. So, the highest seed of each group of 4 down the bracket is where it's hosted. So, like Kansas State is hosting, Iowa's hosting, Columbia, obviously. So, that's how it works in the women's side of things, which I think is pretty cool. It's just like if you're going to set it up that way, you can't try to eliminate the home court advantage. Now, Virginia Tech women's team has not lost a game at home this year. The men's team only lost 2 at home. So
it might be 3 tomorrow.
Well, we'll see. But it's a massive, massive home court advantage being in Blacksburg. And I'm sure most of these other teams that are hosting their regionals will say the same thing. But if they're going to set it up to where there's going to be teams hosting in those first round, why are we trying to take away home court advantage? That's set it up that way. You set it up that way, NCAA. You are the ones bringing the schools to one central location. You didn't have to do that. Mm-hmm. You could pick a neutral site, but they didn't. Let the teams do their home court advantage. Last year, they didn't let Virginia Tech play Inter Sandman. Guess what everybody did? They sang it anyway. All right?
That's tradition. That's tradition.
It is. It's tradition. And you'd think taking away the guitar and the drums is going to keep us from singing and getting rowdy. No. Let teams do their traditions if they're going to be hosting these games. I get it. It's a NCAA game. It's supposed to be neutral site, but you set it up that way. All right? Don't cry. You made the rules. Getting into my bracket, though, and interject wherever you feel you need to. South Carolina and Iowa, I mean, good Lord. Iowa, I think, has more of visible weakness than South Carolina does. I think that there's more of a chance that they don't make it as far as South Carolina does. But I'm not betting against Caitlin Clark. Sorry. I think that's the general opinion. Princeton and West Virginia, couldn't tell you a damn thing about either one of these schools, all right? But I wanted to give the Ivy League some love here. Colorado has been a great women's team all year. 5 seed was a little surprising, but I guess the resumes of the upper schools, it makes sense that they got dropped to 5. But Colorado started this year, I'm pretty sure, as a top 10 women's team. So, I see them making a very good run. Unfortunately, that leads to Caitlin Clark. Lowering it down here, we've got Notre Dame, who 2 seed I thought made so much sense. This team is great. And I'm not just saying that because they kicked Virginia Tech's ass. We were shorthanded, but they're still great defensively. And I think they're going to be able to make as long as a run as their offense can sustain. I'm not worried about the defense. The issue is you get to South Carolina, who's just a juggernaut. They're just a step above Notre Dame, right? Notre Dame is one of the best women's team in the country. And like I said, 1 through 5 seed-wise, you could make a case for all of them to win any game. But I'm going to go with South Carolina there. LSU, they make their run. Toughest game until the Iowa game is UCLA, and I think that they pull off what is technically an upset there. But I think that stops at Caitlin Clark. I think she gets her revenge. Now, the LSU team is deeper than it was last year, and it's deeper than Iowa's. Like, that's not an opinion matter. That's just a fact, right? So you can make the case, and I wouldn't really argue that hard with you, that LSU will beat Iowa again. I'm just rolling with the hot hand right now, and that's Caitlin Clark. That's the all-time scorer of college basketball, the all-time three-point shot maker in college basketball. I'm rolling with her. I think, the cards are just falling right. Now, as we move down here, when I was watching the selection show last night, and I saw that UConn and Ohio State were in our side of the bracket with USC, I was nervous. But seeing how things play out and seeing as how we're not going to see UConn or Ohio State until they have to knock one of the other off, gives me a little bit more confidence, because if we had like a straight row of having to play UConn and then having to play Ohio State and maybe seeing USC, I don't think that we get out of it. But that's not the case. The case here is UConn and Ohio State are going to beat up on each other. And hopefully, we already beat Ohio State last year in the tournament. We have a deeper team. If Liz is healthy, is what this entire thing is based on. If Elizabeth Kitley is healthy, then we have a chance to go win a national championship. 3-time ACC Player of the Year, back-to-back-to-back, all-time double-double leader, top 3 scorer, top 3 rebounder. She's one of the best players the ACC has ever seen. So with her on the court, I'm taking Virginia Tech. That's just how it is with me. USC is a tough draw. Okay, that it's not going to be a walk in the park. But Matilda Eck, Kayla King, we've got shooters everywhere, all along the perimeter, with one of the best 2-way, 3-way scorers with Georgia Amore in the country. Finalist for the Naismith alongside Liz. Obviously, that's probably going to go to Caitlin Clark. All good, right? Understandable. But we've got 2 top 10 players in the country on this squad. The best duo scoring-wise and assist-wise in the country on this squad. I think we just go as far as the shots falling takes us. Going to the other side, I have Florida State upsetting Texas. That's not going to be a popular pick. Texas, realistically, who do I think is winning that game? Texas. What have I seen from the Florida State women's team this year? They're dogs, right? They are dogs down there. So the Florida State women's team, realistically, probably not happening, but I have them beating Texas in the round of 32 as like the real upset of this bracket, but I don't really have any others. I guess Utah beating Gonzaga, but no real like upsets until you get here. So I wanted to just throw that in. NC State, their women's team is insane. So I have them taking out Florida State. And then when we get up to the Final Four, SEC, Big Ten, and then 2 ACC squads, I was tempted to roll with NC State, but not over South Carolina, dog. And if I'm completely honest here, I think the more realistic outcome is South Carolina versus Iowa, and I think South Carolina wins. Now, going off of the momentum that I mentioned, if Liz plays for Virginia Tech in this March Madness run, I've got Virginia Tech being able to come away with it. But if we don't have any control of the paint, there's no shot in hell that we take down a South Carolina. So that's my bracket. I put some of my bias in there as well as my honest opinion about things. But yeah.
Okay, scroll to the top.
Gotcha.
So Iowa, right? I've said this multiple times. I understand Caitlin Clark has broke records, but let's be realistic. Who's the second leading scorer in Iowa?
Couldn't tell you.
Exactly. There you go. So I'm not betting against Caitlin Clark. The West Virginia head coach came out and already said the goal is to beat Caitlin Clark. That's the goal. The goal is to beat Caitlin Clark, right? Caitlin Clark is the system in Iowa. She's the system. Now, she can average 30 points a game, 35. But what if she gets injured? What if something happens where they use her as a defensive liability to get her to 5 a game? I think Iowa probably wins the first 2 games. Maybe I pick Iowa to get upset by Colorado. Caitlin Clark is the only player that you have to worry about if your opponents. Caitlin Clark. I understand she can pass, she can assist, she can do all those things. But let's be real. At the end of the day, Caitlin Clark is the system. I related to Tom Brady. Who was the Patriot way? Tom Brady was the Patriot way.
Yeah, but I don't think that's a good comparison because he was the system and he led them to championships.
Well, what did Caitlin Clark do? And I understand Caitlin Clark, they lost to LSU. But this team, I don't think this team is really as good as they were last year. I think this team has fell off just a little bit downhill. I think Iowa loses in the Sweet 16. That's just my prediction. LSU, Angel Reese, they got the transfer, I think, from Miami. Was it Haley Van Fleth or whatever her name is?
Van Lith.
Van Lith, yeah, she's the transfer. I think LSU will make some noise. I know Angel Reese has some things to say. We want to meet South Carolina again. I think LSU has the potential to make it up there. I think the LSU one is very, very realistic. Um, let's go South Carolina. I'm not even going to go against South Carolina.
Yeah,
I'm not
can't
going against
can't
South
do it.
Carolina. I mean, they're going to win it. Obviously, I know they almost lost that SEC championship game, but if it weren't for the backboard shot, everything would be fine. UCLA. I think UCLA is a team that could possibly beat LSU. Now, LSU, there has been former players that came out and says that they're not leading as a team, or there's just a lot of stuff, obviously, like the culture. Not saying that the culture is bad, but taking ownership. Like after that fight that happened with South Carolina, like who are the dogs, right? And you always have former players or former teams in each year have something to say, like, oh, this mentality, this team is a little bit different, and this guess is not. But what if this LSU team doesn't keep their composure? What if UCLA comes up on top and wins? It's all about keeping that composure. You can't have that fight breaker that you had against South Carolina, right? Imagine if you kept your composure, you didn't have any ejections, because that happened within 2 minutes of the game. That's what happened. It happened within 2 minutes of the game and you lost. Just imagine if you didn't fight, you would have had a chance to win that game. Oh, we got to wait to see them maybe next year in the tournament. So LSU's got to be able to keep their composure. Notre Dame. Notre Dame can shoot. Notre Dame did expose Virginia Tech. Understand that Virginia Tech does not have Elizabeth Kitley. I do understand that. The head coach of Virginia Tech did not make it, too much known about the details and injury. Y'all will figure it out on Friday if she's going to play or not. I'm glad he did the Bill Belichick. I don't talk about injuries. We're going to keep going, and then we go from there. That is just how we operate around here. Scroll down. So USC, think USC will make some noise. I like where USC. I like that they got pure shooters. They got that girl that scored what 50 points. 50 points early in the season. She's a baller. Obviously, we got to give her more respect. Obviously, I know we've been talking about Caitlin Clark, but we got to give her more respect as well. I think USC would do something. I agree with you when it comes to Virginia Tech. But without Elizabeth Caitlin, they say they don't have her against Marshall. I don't see them going that far in the tournament
Yeah,
without Elizabeth
I'm
Caitlin.
with you. Without Liz, I don't see us getting past the round of 32.
Yes, so that's why I agree on that point. UConn. What type of UConn team are we really gonna get? Those the question. This is not the same UConn team 3, 4 years ago where they were constantly going back to the Final Fours and winning. This is not the same UConn team. I understand they got Paige Buckner's. She had an injury, obviously, and she just got back. And I understand, there's a little bit of egos when it plays from UConn and how Gino approaches certain players and stuff. But UConn will probably lose to Ohio State. I wouldn't be surprised if we lose to Syracuse. Now, this Texas bracket, right?
Yeah,
Florida State.
yeah.
Florida State has dogs. I I feel like between Florida and Texas A&M, excuse me, Florida State, Texas A&M, the game could go either way. Now, here's the upset pick that nobody knows about. Green Bay won their conference. Nobody knows about Green Bay, right? I understand Tennessee's number 6 seed, but my only upset pick that I'll pick is Green Bay to beat Tennessee and UC Irvine to beat Gonzaga. Watch out for those picks. Green Bay has only lost 3 games within the whole season. Those underdog teams that win their conference, like the conferences you barely hear about, those are the teams that you really got to watch out for. Those my only 2 upset picks is possibly Green Bay over Tennessee and UC Irvine over Gonzaga. Depending on how UConn, if UConn starts off slow, don't be surprised if they lose to Jackson State, because Jackson State is making some noise without Coach Prime.
I think on the smaller school side, like when I mentioned at the lead of the show, and I said that like 1 through 5, 1 through 6 is just so deep. The talent difference, I think, is similar to that of football, where the top schools in women's college basketball are just so much better than these bottom tier schools. And, similar thing can be said for the men's side too, but we know, I mean, personally, we know people that should have been D1 and winded up going other routes and have had to transfer into smaller D1 schools later down the line. Like that's a much more frequent thing. Like there's going to be dogs on every level in the men's side of college basketball. I think women's, the same could be said to an extent, but not to the extent of, in my opinion, a team that is not full of, lack of better words, like D1 level dogs. Like if you were in the women's game, and obviously it's expanding now and there's more parity everywhere, but I still think it's top heavy, that being 1 through 6. That's still 30 some teams, like, so I think outside of those 30 teams, it's going to be hard to find a real upset there. That's my only slight disagreement, but I do hear what you're saying, and it is March, so anything can happen. But that Tennessee team, I don't think they get past NC State, but it's hard to bet against the Lady Vols.
Well, this is it for the women's bracket. Like I said, it starts very soon. Obviously, the women's will start before the men's. Obviously, the men's will start on Thursday, obviously, and the women's will start before that. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe to Total Pool Nation. March Madness is here. Let us know our upset picks. Let me know who y'all got. But we'll catch you later. Y'all have a great day.